Everybody, Blue Ridge Rider, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to change the oil and filter on a 2021 Yamaha MT-03. If you find my DIY videos like this and others helpful, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel, and I really appreciate if you leave a comment below. So let's get into this. First thing I'm going to do is start with the tools that I use, and then we're going to get the oil changed, and we'll show you how to reset the indicator light as well. All right, this is a really simple task. Good beginner task, or if you're just learning to maintain your own bike, great way to do it. So this particular bike takes 2.2 liters roughly. I got that from my owner's manual. It's essential if you got your owner's manual to have it and check on it. It's got some good information in here on how to place the crush washer, which I'll show you when we get there, and the torque values to use to put the drain plug back in, and the oil filter itself. So we've got our oil filter right from Yamaha. For those of you who try to get it off of Amazon or something, there's the part number for you. I also replace the crush washer every time that I change the filter. I don't know if that's necessary, but that's the way we do it. Then I've got one of these little quick and easy to use oil filter wrenches. It clips right on the end. You put your socket wrench in here, but I also have my backup set. I have had one filter on this bike so far that was really tight and a bear to get off. So worst come to worst, I'll use this to take the filter off, but I would never use this to put the filter on. You want to put the filter on very lightly. I've got an oil filter, we'll need that as well. Got my socket wrench with a 12mm socket to pull the drain plug out, and then a 4mm Allen wrench to help pull the bottom cowl off. And then again, I'm going to use my rear stand. I don't know that you got to have a rear stand, but I like to do it. I think it makes it easier. And then we got our oil drain pan. One little hint on the oil drain pan: make sure you pull your plugs before you start dumping oil in. Otherwise, it kind of tends to burp the air out of the oil drain pan, and it'll kind of splash oil everywhere. All right, so let's get the bike up on the stand and get into this. Okay guys, let's get the bike up on the rear stand. I really recommend having a helper to do this. I don't have anybody with me here today, so I'm going to do it on my own. You got to have spools on the rear swing arms. We've got that, and we've got our rear stand. So I'm going to get the bike up, and then we'll get the oil changed. So first thing I like to do is stand on the bike, kickstand side, kind of put my hip into the bike to right the bike, bring the stand in. This is usually the trickiest part, is getting the rear stand lined up with the spools. Once you've got it there, you got to push down on the rear stand. Now, as I do that, the bike's going to roll backwards, but the stand's going to try to roll forward. So it gets a little tricky, and I really want more weight over the stand. So once I've got the stand like this, I can pretty much hold the bike up with one hand. Now I'm going to move back here and push on the rear stand. As soon as the bike starts up, you pretty much got it. So here you go. We got the bike on the rear stand. Let's get the oil changed. All right, the first thing we got to do is get this rear cowl off. So it's got a 4mm Allen screw here and a 4mm Allen screw here, and there's two on each side. So as soon as we get those off, you kind of have to spread the front of this of the plastic cowl, and it'll drop off. So let's get those bolts off. I'm going to take the other two off, not on camera. Take these two off on camera and spread it and show you how I get it off the bike. One tool I forgot to mention is I like to use one of these magnetic bolt holders. This one's really cool. My wife got me this last time we were at the racetrack at Barber doing a track day with the motorcycles. So I put my bolts in there. Again, we've got two here. They're snug. These don't go back in with any particular torque rating, at least not when I do it. But I put them in good and tight. You don't want them to vibrate out and lose one of them. So we've got both of these out. And now it's really just a matter of kind of flexing this cowl a little bit to remove it off of the bolts. So you can kind of see how that sort of popped off there. Reach over the other side. There we go. So we've got the cowl off. If it's dirty, sometimes we'll clean it up. This is looking pretty good. Hadn't been that long since we were in here doing this, because she puts a lot of miles on. A little dirty. We might give that a good cleaning while it's off as well. All right, so here you can see the oil drain plug, and here you can see the filter. Some folks would like to run the bike and get it warm to make the oil easier to drain out. It makes it warm, usually a little thinner, it drains out easier. And same with the filter. So if you look at the Yamaha manual, it actually recommends changing the oil like every 3,000 and oil and filter every 6. I think we have probably just said, if we're going to this effort, we're going to go ahead and change the filter. Cost you another 12 bucks or something like that. Maybe a little more risk that you would damage the filter threads, but you never want to do that anyway. So I've got my 12mm socket here. We're going to crack this loose. The other thing that I need to do, and I'm going to go ahead and do that, is I'm going to loosen the oil filler cap so that I can get some air into the system as the oil starts draining out. So I've cracked the oil filter cap right there. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this drain plug. One of the things that I have learned just from experience, I'm gonna move the camera and my drain pan back a little ways. Got my light here so you guys can see better, but the oil does tend to shoot out a lot farther than you think. So as I unscrew this, I keep a little pressure on the bolt. Usually you can kind of keep almost all the oil in if you just hold the bolt there. But then once the bolt comes out, oil is coming out. Here we go. So I'm going to take my bolt, clean it up good, and get the crush washer off of it. I don't know if I can show you. Let me clean it up here and see if you can see the crush washer. Crush washer direction does make a little bit of a difference, I think. I mean, I've heard some people argue that it doesn't, but there's a crush washer up there at the base of the bolt. So I'll get a little razor blade or a knife or something if I need to. Looks like I'm getting lucky here. I'm getting it to kind of thread off. So there's a crush washer. We'll just take that off. We're going to replace it. Here's my drain bolt. I'm going to put this in my bolt holder so I don't lose it. And as soon as the oil's drained out, we'll get the filter off. So I've got my filter wrench, which fits on there good and snug. Got my socket wrench. Looks like we're getting most of the oil drained out of there pretty good. Go ahead and get my socket wrench on here. See if we get lucky and break this loose. Sometimes, for whatever reason, oil filters tend to get really tight, and usually on the side of the oil filter it'll tell you just tighten it up hand tight. I think because when they do get tighter, they get really hard to get off. So hopefully we're going to be able to get this one off. That's most of the oil out. We're going to go ahead and pull this. I'm sure there's oil behind the filter. Now it is tight. All right, but we broke it loose, so that's a good thing. That's where I want it to be. Tight enough that we can get it off with the filter wrench. I'm just going to crack it there and let a little bit of the oil drain out so oil doesn't go everywhere. You got to remember the filter is full of oil as well. Get that, go ahead. It's all right. Drain my filter out. And then another little problem that you may find you have is that once you get your filter wrench on like that, it can be hard to get off. I just take something, socket wrench, anything, just gently bump on it, and usually it'll come on off. I got it on there pretty good, so I'll have to take a screwdriver and drive this off. I'll try one more time here. There we go. Right in the oil. That figures. Okay, so now we got the oil plug out. We got the oil filter off. Really, it's as simple as doing that in reverse, and we're done changing our oil. Now I'm gonna let things sit here and drain out pretty good before I put oil and filter back in. And while I'm doing that, let me show you one other thing that we use. I don't think this is necessary, but we do use a synthetic oil. I don't know that you got to do that. We just chose to. I think if you've started with regular, you probably ought to continue with regular. No point in overcomplicating that, so to speak. All right, so got our filter and our crush washer, and I am gonna look in my book. There's a diagram in the owner's manual. In our manual, it is on page 7-10 that shows how to orient the crush washer. If you look at the crush washers, it's probably about impossible to see on my camera, but it's actually a cone shape. It's tapered. It's not just a flat piece of metal. And the way this goes on the drain bolt is the cone. I got to double check. I just looked at it. I'm going to double check because it's easy to get it backwards. The cone points towards the head of the bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and put my crush washer on. Try to show you the orientation I chose there, which is per the owner's manual. We're going to get that on and ready to go. And we've got our new filter here. You always want to make sure your new filter should have this piece of plastic on it, just to make sure that it's good and clean and there's not something in the filter. So we'll get this plastic off. And then another thing you want to do, and this one has a little bit of grease on it, but I have always lightly applied some oil to that. And in fact, on the filter itself, it says apply oil lightly to the gasket before installation. Tightening torque 15 to 20 Newton meters. Run engine for 3 minutes to check for oil leakage. So we'll run it before we put the bottom cowl back on. So 15 to 20 Newton meters. We're going to use that here in just a second. I'll have to get my torque wrench, which is the one tool that I didn't show you that I should have, because we definitely want to use a torque wrench on the drain plug in this filter. This is not the kind of stuff you want to mess up right here. You tear these threads up, that's a big deal. So I'm going to leave the oil plug out and let it continue to drain. Got my new oil here. This one's sealed. Always struggle with these seals a little bit. Yep, there we go. It didn't come off. That's what I figured. All right, get just a little bit of oil on my finger. Run it around the gasket, just like it says on the oil filter. Go ahead and start this on. Gonna run it down till it's hand tight. Now the old-fashioned way of doing this, which I think still works and actually applies here, is that should be 3/4 of a turn from where that seated. So you run it down to the oil seats and then you give it another 3/4 of a turn. So I'm gonna get my torque wrench and go ahead and put the filter on per the torque value in the book, since I know it. Stand by, I'll be right back. All right guys, I'm back. I've got my torque wrench. Per the manual, you tighten the oil filter to 17 Newton meters. So it's important to make sure you're talking feet pounds or foot pounds squared or Newton meters. And in this case, it's Newton meters. So that's where I've set my wrench. This is a lot more turning than I would have thought, which is probably why this filter was so tight. There we go. So now I've got the filter torqued in place. And you can see by this time, most of the oil has drained out. We're still dripping a little bit, but not much. So we're gonna go ahead and get the drain plug put back in. Now, per the manual, the oil drain plug goes in at 20 Newton meters. So I'm gonna set my torque wrench here. I'm gonna get it in the light where I can see it good. And let's see, we're 17 here, so 18, 19, and 20 foot-pounds. So let me get my 12mm socket on here. Oil drain plug going in. With the crush washer. Make sure the crush washer doesn't fall off. All right, and you see a pretty darn big gap there. And you've got to crush that out, which is why they call it a crush washer. So I'm holding out here on my handle, making sure I'm using my torque wrench right. There it is, right there. Bam. Okay, now we had a little bit of oil dripping down from the drain bolt and a little bit of oil still running out from the filter. We're gonna get all that cleaned up good, get the filter cleaned up good. All right, we should be good to go once we put some oil in here. It'd be a terrible mistake to start the bike right now without oil. So let's move over to the other side and get this thing filled with oil. All right, so let's pull the oil drain plug. And we've got to get, per the owner's manual, 2 1/4 quarts in here. So I've got my funnel, clean it up real good on the end, make sure there's no dirt or anything on my funnel. And I have, as I showed you earlier, I've brand new fresh oil. Gonna get 1 quart in here. I gotta pour it kind of slow. This is actually a little hard to do up on the rear stand. This would be easier off of the rear stand. And I may drop it down before I start it. So hopefully you can see that going in. I'm just taking my time, pouring it slow. Also, I'll take my used motor oil. You saw my oil drain pan. I'll take the used motor oil. Advanced Auto or O'Reilly's around here, either one of those guys will recycle your oil. You just bring it in. They log down how much you bring in, making sure you're not running some kind of shop, but for any kind of homeowner, they're more than glad to take your oil. One thing that I would maybe advise is overfilling is probably as bad as, depending on who you ask, overfilling with oil can be as bad as underfilling with oil. So I tend to maybe put a little less oil in there than what I think I need and run the bike, and then make sure that we've got plenty of oil. And then I can always top it off a little bit. If you get too much oil in, it is a pain in the tail to get it out, or you could potentially end up having to drain all of the oil out to get it changed. So you want to avoid that if you can. So breaking my seal on my oil again here. Yamaha likes to seal it up good, I'll give them that. All right, so we got quart number 2. I almost poured this, I had my funnel in the empty bottle so that the oil would drain out. I almost poured this new bottle into the empty bottle instead of into the bike. That would have been pretty dumb. All right, we're coming up on 2 quarts. Have another 1/4 of a quart to add. Mrs. Blue Ridge Rider is doing her best in the background to distract me. And doing a good job of it. All right, and get every last drop of that synthetic oil out of there. That stuff ain't cheap. All right, so I'm not gonna go the full 2 1/4, and it's, the book says 2.22 quarts. I've got about, right at about 1/4 of a quart left in here. So I'm gonna put most of what's in here in, but I'm gonna leave just a little bit out so we can top it off. Now the downside to taking this off the rear stand is gonna be putting the bottom cowling back on, but it's not that hard to do. So I'm gonna put about half of this in, save a little bit. Right there, okay. Now, we're gonna take the bike off of the rear stand, start it up, let it run for 3 minutes, again per the owner's manual, and check for leaks. If we don't have any leaks, we'll put the bottom cowl back on, and then we will reset the service indicator. And I'm gonna show you how to do that as well. It can be a little confusing resetting the service indicator. We've kind of struggled back and forth with it. One time we'll be able to do it. Next time it'll take us 20 minutes to reset the service indicator. So hopefully I can show you how to do it right the first time. And I've got my oil filler cap. We're gonna get that on the bike. I'm gonna take the bike off the rear stand and run it. I'm not gonna drag you guys through that. I'm gonna check for leaks. As soon as we've done that, we're gonna put the bottom cowl back on, which is really the reverse of taking it off. So actually, I don't even think I'm gonna show you putting the bottom cowl back on either. We're gonna get the bike off, check for leaks, and then we'll show you how to reset the maintenance light. Another super important step is you want to verify that you've got enough oil in the bike. So here's the oil sight glass, which is right under the crank cover, and there's a low and a high mark. So once we have the bike level, after we've been running it for a few minutes, which we just ran it for the 3 minutes there to check for oil leaks, you want the oil level to be between these 2 marks. So I'm gonna get Mrs. Blue Ridge Rider to stand the bike up straight for me. Okay, hold it right there, good and straight. And as you can see from that, sorry, I moved a little bit, we're above the low mark, pretty good. It's actually more than what it shows in the camera. Sorry, trying to get the camera in there. But we could stand to have just a little bit more oil. Now, the difference between those 2 marks is not much. It'll move quick, and it's a little confusing. I'm trying to, sorry, I keep moving the camera around, but this mark right here is not near as low on the bottom end as it shows on the camera. It's actually up a little higher than that. But I'm gonna go ahead and add the rest of that quart and then check it again here really quick. And then we're gonna reset the service indicator. But this would be good. This is between the marks right here. All right, guys, we got the oil level right. Now we're gonna reset the oil change trip indicator. So I'm gonna turn the bike on, and down here are my odometer readings. I'm gonna cycle through the odometer readings. I've actually already got it on the oil right now, but I wanna show you that there's a couple. So there's the total mileage on the bike. Here's the 34.0.6. That's a trip indicator that she's used. You don't want that, and you can tell because of the decimal point. Then I'm going to keep selecting through it here. The one without the decimal point is the oil trip indicator. So once you get there, what you want to do is you want to push and hold the reset button until both this trip indicator and the oil light start flashing. When they both start flashing, I took my finger off, you're going to push the reset button again. Push and hold. That's it. I had to push and hold, not just push it momentarily. So there we go. And it actually says that in the book. Push and hold it until it resets. So oil changed. Guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you found this video helpful. Remember, I'm not a professional mechanic. I just do this for fun. I'm a DIYer. But I would say things like this are really simple and enjoyable to do. I really like working on my bike. So hopefully you're able to do this. You get some fun out of it and save a little money. Be safe, ride hard.